Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Hillbilly Files. My name is Leo, and I have a story for you guys today. I am in Williamson, in my hometown, at the end of 3rd Avenue. I'm standing under the shade of the opening in our flood wall. Wow, look what the nests up there in the corner. Wow. Anyway, I'm just kind of hanging out in the shade. It's going to be really hot today, and we're going to walk right up through here in a second, and I've got some stuff I want to show you guys. Now, we came across this story a little over a year ago, but as you guys know, we prefer to have a grave site to go with our stories whenever possible. Sometimes that requires a bit of patience, even though it's very tempting to just tell the story as is. We usually wait until we get a lead on one of the grave sites, and you know, that's happened many times. We found out about this story when we did a video called Bloody December last year. One of the graves near the person we were there to see was this gentleman's brother, and when we pulled his death certificate, it said he was a police officer and died in a fire in a hotel in Williamson, which is where our story begins today. Surprisingly, this story is not really known very well. If you ask almost anyone that lives here, they would probably have no clue what you're talking about. It involves a plot to silence witnesses, as well as murder, arson, and 8 innocent lives lost in a very horrific way. The events took place on December 7th in 1927 in a hotel and boarding house here in Williamson called the Raymond. We have one picture of the building only, and it's long gone now, but we think we know where it was here on 3rd Avenue. So we're going to try and line it up the best that we can and see where it happened. This story is also linked to another story that we're doing soon, which is the murder trial of Elijah Wellman. But that's a whole nother story for another day. 6 of the 8 deaths were witnesses set to testify the very next day. So let's go back in time to a very cold winter night in 1927. One woman there for the night was 26-year-old Biddie Hampton. Now, her husband Will had been murdered. Let me back up. These guys make sure they're not thinking I'm wanting to cross. Anyhow, her husband Will had been murdered, leaving her and her 3 children all alone. She was there to testify and put his murderers behind bars. Her children were there as well. Goldie, who was 5 months old, Wade, who was 2, and her infant son Thomas, who was newborn. Deputy John L. Markham was there as a witness, along with Pearlie Johnson Browning, who was 19. She was also a witness. There was a restaurant on the ground floor. Bob Ierson and his nephew ran it and lived in a small area upstairs. They were also there that night, sleeping after a long day of work, taking care of the filled to capacity hotel. Sometime in the night, smoke began to fill the rooms, and people gradually began to notice that something was very wrong. Biddie grabbed her children, but she couldn't get down the stairs to get outside. A raging hot fire now blocked her way. So she ran into a shared bathroom to try and find a window or another way out. Deputy John Markham had an artificial leg that took a while to put on. It wasn't like the ones that we have today, and he simply couldn't walk without it. This cost him precious time. So he also ended up running into the bathroom to escape the heat and smoke. Now trapped with Biddie and the screaming, terrified children, Pearlie also couldn't find a way out and ended up in the bathroom as well. They simply had no escape route. There was no way out. All of their bodies were found in the bathroom, huddled together. 12 occupants on an upper floor braved the flames and made it out, but 2 sections were blocked off by the flames, and Biddie's side was blocked. The others could escape, but just barely. William Bland and his brother Archie, who the newspaper cited as being Negroes. They thought that was important for some reason. They were the only ones who were brave enough to run back into the building to save lives. Archie had gotten up early that morning and was outside when he noticed the smoke. He ran back up the stairs and through the flames to find William overcome by smoke and badly burned. He carried him to safety, where both men were brought to the Williamson Memorial Hospital in bad shape. A woman named Mary McCoy wrapped a coat around herself and ran through the burning hallway, making it to safety with only minor burns. Ironically, the death of the witnesses didn't really affect the trial that much, because they had given sworn testimony at a pre-trial hearing the day before. But the arsonist who lit the fire, he didn't know that. The fire was started in the hallway in a trash can. Today we're going to visit the only reachable grave site that we could find. The grave of young Pearlie Browning. She is buried in a very remote mountaintop cemetery in Crum, West Virginia. Today, we're going to try to find her. Biddie, her husband, and their children, well, there may be a quest for another day. They would definitely require some mountainside climbing, and it's just too overgrown this time of year. Pearlie was married to William Browning and the daughter of Doc Johnson and Rebecca Markham, one of 7 children. She was very loved and very missed when her life was cut short senselessly. People say that the world is evil and cruel these days, but the truth is, it's always been that way, and it's probably not going to change anytime soon, to be honest about it. Now, the spot that you're looking at right now, that's the DMV and Human Services office right next door. Now, we took this old picture, and I've gone around and around and around. I even thought that it could have been a typo, that it happened on 4th Avenue possibly, but it doesn't look like it. After further research and trying to line up this old picture, I think we found it, but I think it's gone. Now, this building and this building are pretty new. The ones on the next corner are the old section of town, and it goes on down through there. The Cinderella Theater's on this side. A few other old buildings down on the lower end. Now, this old hotel, the Raymond, we can't find any record of it, but I'm pretty sure that that phone pole sits in the same place that the tilted phone pole in the picture does. I believe the Raymond sat right here. Because if you look down here, do you see the brick building? There was another one right there on the corner. That's Pike Street. I remember years ago when that building also burned, and a friend of mine named Guilford Muncie died in that fire. So I do know a little bit about the town, and I do know a little bit about the old buildings. I'm pretty sure, I'll go 95% sure, that the Raymond Hotel sat right there where the DMV is right now. Now, we've done quite a bit of research on this story, just like we do all of our other stories. Maybe someone else out there can find some information, can have some little tidbit of information that we didn't run across, that we couldn't find. As near as we can tell, guys, after this arson, cover-up, murder of witnesses, as near as we can tell, there was no investigation. The people who did this walked away. The person, I should say, or people who did this walked away. And all these people were killed for no reason. Kind of makes you pause, don't it? It was just more or less dropped, and time moved on, and now we're almost 100 years later, 96 years later. We're going to head out here in a minute, and we're going to head down to Crum, West Virginia, and we're going to see if we can't find Polly's grave and tell her story. Because to be honest, folks, you know yourselves, we all know, all these people, all these innocent people, they had stories too. The children, they never got to tell their story. For something that they weren't even really involved in. You know, their father had been murdered, and they were here for a trial to get justice. The family was seeking justice. But they didn't get justice, did they? You know, you hear stories like these. It's not totally uncommon right here in my own hometown and surrounding. We've done several about corruption and dirty politics and wealthy people connecting other wealthy people, helping them out, hooking them up, covering them up, hiding the truth. And it looks as though that's exactly what happened here. Again, this sort of cruelty, cold-hearted cruelty, isn't something new. We like to think that somehow humans, people, have gotten to a point in our modern world where there's more evil people in the world now. But the truth is, guys, that's not true. That's not true at all. Since the days of Cain and Abel, you've had one person either being jealous, trying to take something, trying to bury the truth, trying to cover up what they did. You've had cold, cruel people all throughout the history of the world, which makes it all that much more important to tell these stories and to point this stuff out whenever you can. So that's why we're here today, to tell this story and remember the innocent lives that were lost here. And we're going to head out here in a few minutes, like I said, and head down to Crum, West Virginia. And this is a little, very small mountaintop cemetery and way out there in the middle of nowhere. I'm not even 100% sure I can find it, but we're going to try. It's going to be a really hot day. It's really weedy. The vegetation is up. And it's probably not the best time in the world to go do it. But like I've said before, this is the day you have. This is the day you do it. So with a little bit of luck, guys, we'll see you at Crum, West Virginia in just a minute. Be right back. Well, guys, I think I'm on the right track. I think we're right up here. Now, I am at the end of, what was it? Cotton Hill Road, excuse me, Cotton Hill Road. And this is the very last house. This is Bill Johnson right down here. I stopped there to ask directions. And just in case any of you are curious about Leo's commitment to finding these old places, Bill here, Mr. Johnson, he has 3 large dogs, including a Siberian Husky. So I had to get out, you know, and go find, you know, them to talk to them, because this is private property. You see, Mr. Johnson, he owns 75 acres here. This is on his land. And so I stopped and told him what I was doing and all this stuff. And it turns out that Mr. Johnson is a relative. He's 6th generation to own this piece of land. And it turns out that the young lady that we're here to see is a relative of his. So he was kind of glad that we were here, you know, to finally tell this story about his family. Raspberries right there, my weakness. Now, he said that it should be called Copperhead Road. He did warn me about that and said that the Siberian, the big dog, the Husky, he said that he was out here about 2 weeks ago, and he said that it killed a rattlesnake right about here somewhere. He said right in here somewhere. I don't know exactly. He said he went up there and found where the dog had gotten a hold of the rattlesnake and put a bunch of holes in it. And, you know, but the dog didn't get bit. So hopefully puppy dog don't do that no more. Hopefully he learns to leaves rattlesnakes alone. But anyway, I've got my go bag because, like I said, mountain, heat, snakes, whatnot. And we're going to go up here and see if we can't find this old graveyard. So I guess without further ado, there is nothing left to do but head up the little trail, park in the shade, head up the little trail, and see if we can't find this old graveyard. And another thing too, this graveyard we found, there are a handful of people who have been documented on this particular graveyard. Most of them just have question marks beside their name. So while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and document the rest of this small graveyard and list all of this so that future generations after Mr. Johnson, he said that he will probably be the last generation to live back here on this mountainside. He said after he's gone, that'll be the end of it. So we'll have this documented so that someday Mr. Johnson's descendants come up here looking for their family members, and we'll make sure that they're able to find it. All right, I get my bag, and as usual, head off into the mountains. We'll see you guys in a few. Well, I've reached the end of the little, I guess, road. and it's got gravel on it, but it's overgrown really bad, so I guess you can call it a road or you can call it a trail, either one. I don't think you'd be wrong either way. Guess what I found at the end of the road? Trail. Haven't seen any snakes yet. I did see some bear poop back by the berries, but we ain't too worried about black bears. I run across them, used to run across them all the time when I was doing trail tours. But let's look around and see if we can find this grave. It should be, it's an old one. And if I'm right, this should only have birth and death dates. And the name, if we're not mistaken, is worn off. But we'll find out, won't we? Okay, shady spot. Stake me out a little spot here. Put my junk down. And start combing the graveyard. Be back in a second. Well, I've kind of went around the graveyard a little bit. It's not that big. It looks like, just guessing, 40 or 50 people here, something along those lines. A lot of these are more recent. But guess what? Guess what we found? Right here. Pearlie Johnson. Right here's her death date. I had to 1927. I'll leave the little rose bush. I would snap stuff like that out of the way normally, but this is obviously a rose bush someone's put on her grave. So we'll leave that there. But this is the final resting spot of Pearlie. And the concept behind this, guys, is what gets me. And if you're the kind of person who believes all of that and believes that this was sheer coincidence on the night before this trial and that all these people died as sheer happenstance, just an unfortunate series of events, I have some really nice beachfront property in Kentucky that you might be interested in. I don't buy that story for a second. I truly believe that this fire in this old hotel was started deliberately to silence witnesses. And all of these victims were basically bystanders who got caught up in this and lost their lives, including the children, who obviously had nothing to do with it and were burned alive in that bathroom. Rest well, Pearlie. Rest in peace. And some of the rest of her family is here as well. And there's a couple others. There's one back here that we've been looking for that we're going to do a little story on as well. But it's just, sometimes you just don't have the words. Sometimes they just all fall into place. But sometimes it's just so senseless and so ridiculous. I think we all know what happened here. I think every single one of us knows what happened to young Pearlie here. It's a shame, isn't it? Young lives wasted. Their stories ended before they ever even got a chance to write their stories. And here they lay for all eternity. I'm thinking that this was a nefarious plan. Let's just be honest. And in a way, this nefarious plan, it worked. The witnesses were silenced. And that was the end of that. We're just going to forget about this. And we're going to move on. Heather and I don't forget stuff, and we don't move on. We will come out here and we will track these stories, and we will hunt these graves. Even way back here on top of a mountain in the middle of nowhere in a tiny little place called Crum, West Virginia, to bring you guys these stories and to tell you about these fine folks and what happened to them. Anyway, you guys, y'all have a really good day. And thank you for watching. Thank you for coming along with us. And thank you for listening to our story and listening to Pearlie's story. We appreciate you, and I'm sure that somewhere right now, Pearlie is probably watching. And I would imagine that she's probably pretty glad to finally, after all these years, to have her story told. You guys have a really good day, and we'll see you next time on the Hillbilly Files. Leo out.